Let's call to order this City Commission workshop meeting of the City of St. Pete Beach. Today is Tuesday, December 10th, 2024. It is 4:30 p.m. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Vice Mayor Mulholland.
Here.
Commissioner Marriott.
Here.
Commissioner Robinson is present. Commissioner Rosnicki.
Here.
Mayor Petrilla.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. So today we're going to have a discussion on the Advisory Board and Committee's Code of Ordinance.
Yes, Mayor, Commissioners, I have attached for your review the Chapter 22 Code of Ordinances that outlines the expectations for each of our advisory boards. I've also attached the notes as provided from Vice Mayor Mulholland back in August. You'll see a list of all meeting dates for 2024 and corresponding attendance or non-attendance, and the 2025 board meeting dates that have been approved, except for the Parks and Recreation Board because they did not meet in November, so that will be for their review at their next meeting in 2025.
Thank you, City Clerk.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Commissioner Mulholland, do you want to take the lead on this one?
Sure thing, Mr. Mayor. So I think, as everybody here knows, I introduced this item back in August, and we volleyed it around a couple times, and then the storms came, and obviously it took a back seat. But the real genesis behind me putting forth this proposal was it started when I started paying attention to what was going on in city government, and there was a lot of conversation in 2023. It seemed like the city clerk was pulling her hair out with issues with attendance and issues with lobbyist reports for the two boards that require the lobbyist reports to be filled out. And then in January, I was appointed to the Board of Adjustment, and I got to observe some of these things firsthand at that point, participating as a board member. And then talking to a number of the, well, really all the board chairs, with the exception of Board of Adjustment, because I served on that, just getting some input from them on how they felt about the time that they were putting in for the city. And I was basically left with the feeling that, one, we needed to tighten up some of the attendance requirements, reporting requirements, but to also create some synergy or mesh points between the various boards and committees, particularly the big ones, but not just the four, what I would call the big four, really all the committees, but I focused on the big four to try, not to make it too overwhelming coming right out of the gate. So that was really the genesis behind me, just putting some things on paper. I'm really not wed to any of the proposals that I have necessarily put forward. These were my ideas, and I thought that they would be a starting point for the commission to consider. I guess the only thing I will say that if we have to prioritize, because most of the proposals are the same with the exception of the reporting. They pretty much parallel one another so far as the requirements and the like, except reporting that only applies to Board of Adjustment as well as Planning Board. So I know that we have beach coming up fairly soon, and beach only meets twice. I'm sorry, I apologize. Only meets, I believe, 4 times a year. That struck me for something as important as our number one asset in the city, beside our residents, as not being enough. And I had proposed that I thought maybe they should meet monthly like the other big boards. I will say that the vice chair of the Beach Stewardship Committee, we've spent quite a bit of time communicating about the beach ordinance and the beach in general on a host of matters. He does feel that if we're going to ask the beach stewards to have more regular meetings, and he does support them presenting before the commission, at least periodically, that he would like to see more support from the city for the Beach Stewardship Committee. Feels that maybe they hadn't been taken as seriously as maybe they need to be or needed to be. So I just wanted to add that while I feel, in my opinion, that they probably should meet monthly, that was my initial suggestion. I have spoken to the vice chair and the chair of the Beach Stewardship Committee, and the vice chair's comment was, if we're going to meet monthly, I hope we have better support than we have now. So I did want to throw that in there. But I don't know if today, if it would be best to just talk about beach first, since we're working towards getting that ordinance up here and hopefully approved, or Mr. Mayor, how we want to proceed on it, whether we want to talk about them individually. I got a feeling if we talk about all 4 individually, we won't get through them all in an hour. And I also know that the city clerk wants us to at least have a conversation as it relates to Zoom-type meetings for the boards and committees. So I would suggest, obviously, Mr. Mayor, you run the show, that maybe we start with beach and have conversations about that and, see where we go. But
So if we break it down to the 3 big categories rather than addressing each board individually, so one is if we look at the beach stewardship, see if there's, if we need to make an adjustment there on how frequently they meet and exactly what they would be doing if they're meeting, 4 times as many. Then the second category would be the lobby reports, right? So we have several boards that require the members of the board to disclose their interactions with lobbyists, registered lobbyists. That's something that I've brought up, I don't know, probably at least half a dozen times in the last year and a half. And then the third category would be, attendance, remote attendance, and whether we would, want to allow that, whether we want to delegate it back to the individual committees and allow them just the same way that the commission usually does it, or whether we want to set specific guidelines, how often, under what circumstances. So I think we can tackle those 3 things. If you're all in agreement, we can start with that. If there's anything else that comes up, we can tackle each one of these one at a time, and then go from there. So if that's the case, then let's start with the beach one. So 2 questions I have for the proposal for the beach is, one, what would they be doing, meeting 12 times a year? And then, well, we have 3 questions. Are the board members, so you've spoken with the chair and the vice chair, and they seem to be open to the idea of meeting more frequently. I guess the question then is, are the other members available to meet more frequently because they initially signed up for meeting 3 or 4 times a year? And then the third question is, when they say they would like to see more support, what specifically are they looking for? What does that support look like? So that if they're telling us that this is what we need, then we can, as a commission, say, yes, we can do that, or no, that's maybe something we can't do. Just make sure that we understand what their expectations are so that we can, address those.
Are those questions for me or for them?
No, I think those are the three questions that I have regarding, so I mean, you may have other questions. And for me, the question is, what are they going to do? What exactly will they be doing, meeting 12 times a year? Are the members okay with meeting that often when they sign up for significantly less commitment? And then 3, when they say they want support, what support are they looking for?
Well, from my perspective, maybe they don't need to meet 12 times a year, but I know I've spent a good amount of time here in the last several weeks on beach issues, and I have a feeling that if they were meeting and were getting the support from the city, maybe I would have been able to spend more time on other things. So, I mean, that's real-world, firsthand experience in recent weeks. Now, I understand we just had a storm, but, the beach isn't going anywhere. And, with the new beach ordinance and the like, they're apt to have a lot more to do there. I did speak to the chair. He's here today. I'm not sure if we want any comments or not. I spoke to the chair very early on. In fact, I was still a candidate at that time, I believe. He was supportive of more meetings. The vice chair was supportive of more meetings, but maybe not monthly, particularly, I mean, quote unquote, I don't want to say quote unquote, but his main concern was if they were going to have more meetings, they wanted more staff support in order to get things done at those meetings. So that's been my conversation about the meeting counts and what they would do.
So what do they mean by more support? I'm just trying to understand exactly what it is they're asking for. Do they want a dedicated person on staff to work with them? Do they want reports? What exactly are they? So just so that we know what we can agree to give them.
So once again, I can't speak for them.
Right.
I'm just going off meetings with them. They do feel that staff should have a lot more involvement in teeing things up and prepping things for them to work with on the beach. And the second question there that you had was?
Whether the other 3 board members would be open to meeting more frequently?
Oh, no, not that. No, still on the support.
So are they looking for dedicated staff? I mean, I'm just trying to understand.
I'm not sure necessarily looking for dedicated staff, but looking for more staff support and direction for their initiatives. I don't believe, I'll give you an example. I mean, I'm going to talk about it again tonight. We talked about it at the last meeting, the rope fence. That, to me, that should have happened between staff and beach stewardship. And I think, I have found out, I believe staff was working on some of that, but I don't believe the beach stewardship was aware of that because I had met with had a phone call with the vice chair on that exact matter, and I know for a fact he wasn't aware of it. So I think that's probably the type of support they're talking about, that there be more communication. And I get that. I got the same thing from the Historic Preservation Board. Now, understand, we have new city leadership now. And I will say that one of my biggest complaints before I ever took office here was the lack of communication and follow-up from the city government. And that was me as a resident and me hearing it from residents. We're in a very unusual time now, but I will say I feel communication has gotten much better. So a lot of the background on the information that I have received from the various boards was either very early in the new city manager's tenure or, based on past experience of previous city management.
Would it be fair, maybe, so I'm going to turn this around, right? Rather than the beach stewardship members looking for support from the city staff, it almost sounds like they are offering themselves as a resource to the city staff, and maybe we haven't been taking advantage of them as much as we could. So not necessarily a resource for them, but rather bringing those things directly to the commission, run it by the library board, run it, so it's not just a beach stewardship issue, I think. I think it's an area where we could use the resources that we have with the different boards, whether it's historic, whether it's library, whether it's beach stewardship, you know, to bring those things, because again, they're representatives of the community, right? To bring it to them and say, look, here's what we're thinking, here's an issue that we're seeing. Can we get some input or feedback? And then if it has traction in that, with that board, then we bring it to the commission if necessary. Does that sound?
Well, it does. I think that's part of, you know, it's maybe going straight to staff, and I promise you, I don't want to keep talking. I will let you go, Commissioner.
No, I'm only
Commissioner
only as an ex-beach steward, so
Okay.
I'll follow you.
So I'll stop
so,
talking and we'll let the other ones chime
but,
in.
I know David Hubbard, who's the chair of the planning board, spoke to us. It was, I believe, one of the second night we were going to take this up, and he was extremely frustrated. However we do it, all I wanted to do is get it out there and say, I think we ought to be able to do better here. We've got a number of smart people on these boards, and a number of committed people. Not all of them. Some of them, you know, some of them work a lot harder than others, but in general, there's a lot of resources there. So however we can get them to get information and give information, whether it's directly to the commission through the mesh point that I suggested, whether it's more involvement with staff or the like, it doesn't really matter to me. I just think that we really should get them engaged more, and I'm open to whatever way that is. Because if we just want to make unilateral decisions by staff and the commission, why do we bother having the boards?
Right.
It's kind of a waste of everybody's time. So,
Yep.
I've said all I need to say.
No, you can say as much as you like. I only wanted to say something as a prior member of the Beach Steward, and so I can give you that perspective. And I think this applies to all the committees. So when I first started on Beach Steward, you know, you read what is it about? What's the purpose? What are we here for? It's very, very small when you read it, right? There's not much, but when it says something, you know, we've had member come up here, and I'll say Mr. Kurzman, because he has come and said this multiple times, about, it talks about renourishment, the renourishment of the beach. And I'm talking about what our charter says, right? The purpose of this committee. It's far from what they do. And that's the complaint part that I hear Commissioner Mulholland talking about when I don't want to say it's a complaint, it's a disconnect of what is reality, right? If we need a renourishment, it doesn't go to beach stewardship. Pinellas County might be the one starting that, not us even, right? And so there's a disconnect of who's leading it and who's communicating, and even this commission is kind of removed from that too, because we're not leading that renourishment effort. We're hoping someone's going to come and pay for it, right? Use the bed tax or some other money out there and bring it to us. So that's a disconnect from what the purpose of the renourishment committee is, the beach stewardship committee is for. Now, when I was here and when I first started, it seemed like it was a nice committee that we came around and heard turtle trackers come, make a presentation, the skimmers, and I thought, oh, well, that's nice, you know, we hear, but that's it. It was nice. We heard presentations. There was no action. It was not what the purpose of the committee was until we were given a purpose. And the purpose that we were given was the beach ordinance. And then all of a sudden, we were meeting frequently as a committee and also jointly with the commission. And now we had a purpose, not written in our charter, but it was a purpose. Now, in that purpose, could I say, did we need to meet monthly? Absolutely, because we had a task. It was a big task that now at this point, being on the commission, is frustrating that it hasn't been approved, okay? Because that, I don't even know what year that started, okay? So that is frustrating. That is the lack of support, and I'm not gonna say it's from staff. It's from the commission, because we should be pushing for that to be moved, right? And we should be supporting all the work and effort that was done, instead of thinking that we have to start all over again. And this applies to many of the other, I think, boards, when you hear them and when they're frustrated and they ask to meet jointly with the commission because they want to revisit what is their purpose. What do they serve? Because then that determines how frequently you meet. Because to meet, we'll be, you know, back then, I was nice hearing about the turtles and about the skimmers. And yes, we know there's dogs on the beach and they shouldn't be there. And yes, that there is, Florida Department of Environmental Protection can put fences on and it, you know, doesn't hurt the code, or the state won't, you know, all of that, it was nice. But we were not charged to do anything about it, nor had the authority as a beach stewardship to have authority to do anything about it. And I would say that would be the same for the staff working with the committee, right? Because it's not what's written. So how would the staff know how to lead and charge this committee or support the committee when what's written doesn't match the purpose, right? Their work doesn't match the purpose. I think the same for Parks and Recreation, for the library, and I know I mentioned this when you brought this up before to get us to this workshop, is, you know, we have Friends of the Library. Some people are on Friends of the Library that serve on the committee. Okay, how's that possible? Okay, and so to me at that point is, do we need it? Because you could have Friends of the Park, you could have Friends of the Library, right? What's the purpose? What's the purpose of these committees? And, you know, just like we want to revisit, I know we've talked about looking at our charter, even as a commission, there's things that we need to go back and review that's outdated. There hasn't been a review, and I don't know if Amber knows this, since when was the last time any of this has been reviewed and updated to what the city needs? So yeah, we have an hour for this workshop, and it's a lot of work, I think, that needs to be done. I know we're not going to finish it. Can we randomly sit here and just say, okay, let's have them all meet monthly, and then make sure you do your lobbyist report? That doesn't solve the purpose and what we task the committees to do, all the committees. I think Planning Board, Board of Adjustment, Historic have different purposes, and for the most part have been doing it, but they have their frustrations, and they all have voiced some level of frustration because they probably want it revisited as well.
I wonder if the commission will entertain a crazy idea, which might actually get us to stick to our timeline today. So, you know, we're talking about, you know, getting the boards more involved in kind of like their own destiny. I think one of the ways we can do that is in utilizing them as a resource, rather than us sitting here making decisions for the Beach Stewardship Board or any of the other boards. I think we may want to look at giving them a task, kind of a, you know, sending a request to them that the first meeting of the coming year, they'll be responsible for answering these questions, right? The Beach Stewardship Committee should be the one to decide. Well, I think they should do a couple things. The first thing is, and again, I looked at the Beach Stewardship, what our charter says, and that was really the reason I asked, what are they going to do for 12 times a year, right? Because I'm looking at what the charter says, and maybe there's not much for them to do 12 times a year, but if the Beach Stewardship wanted to make a proposal or have the conversation, okay, what do they see their role? How could they serve the city? How can they be a resource to the commission and the staff? What items would they like to tackle? And the same thing for all the other ones, right? Maybe with the exception of, Board of Adjustment, planning. But even they could look at it, again, those are more statutory requirements, but, the Historic Board, right, the Parks and Rec, all the other ones, they could look at it and say, okay, here's what we actually do. Here are the things we actually would want to do. Here's how many times we think we should meet a year. And then bring those things back to the commission and as a proposal, and then, the commission can take a look at it, and then we can make those amendments to the charter and say, okay, here Beach Stewardship Committee, this is what you're telling us you want to do. We agree with ABC, we don't agree with F over here. We can then have those discussions, but then, again, I think we can use the boards as a resource to help answer these questions so that we don't sit here tonight, because we have to answer this question for all the boards, right? Not just, so I think one of the things we could do is just give them a directive, first meeting next year, the first thing you're going to look at is, let's revisit your purpose, let's revisit how many times a year you meet, and then, I'm not sure if there's a third thing, but
Attendance?
Attendance.
well, attendance we would set from, I think that's something that the commission can set for everything.
We should do that.
Yeah, I think we should have a uniform,
Yeah.
because each, yeah,
Depending how often they meet, but that, they come to us with that, then you can determine the.
sure.
attendance.
And then they can make recommendations. So if it's a board that only meets, 6 times a year, it could be that, look, if you miss more than 50%, rather than if you miss 3 in a row, like some of the other boards that meet on a monthly basis, right? Or whatever their recommendation is to the commission.
I think you're also going to want them to also list what support they need,
Mm-hmm.
what they'd like to see.
Sure. Well, I think if they are, if they can revisit the purpose of the board, that'll then, help them in setting the agenda at the beginning of each year for the coming year. And then based on that agenda, they can come back to the city staff and say, okay, here's where we need help in these areas.
But also keeps things current
Mhm.
to our environment, which I think is a great idea, which we definitely need, especially we're in a totally different environment right now.
Yep.
But I think on the other items, attendance and lobbyist reports and those sort of things, I think we could, as a commission, can dictate or decide on at this point. But the other items, I think, it's a great idea. Let them write their destiny.
I think we can let them determine their own attendance as well, because they all meet some of them only meet twice a year, right? Some of them meet 12 times a year. And then, for the ones that meet twice a year, if they miss 3 meetings, that's a year and a half. So for them, it just might be, look, you can't, you know in advance what the meetings are. We have to commit, and we can have a conversation about whether it's Zoom or not. If it's a board that meets twice a year, you can miss one, but attend by Zoom, as long as there's a quorum for it. For example, just throwing out ideas. But just on this one first issue, what are your thoughts?
So I think that's a good idea to throw it back to the committees and the boards to do a little bit of their own deciding, those kinds of things, how often they should meet, that sort of thing. I think that having better communication between the boards and the committees and the commission is a fantastic idea, and I think that having some kind of and I think this is something that the individual boards and committees can also decide, or certainly have significant input into, whether they want to be able to present back to the commission quarterly or monthly, or how often they feel like they would have something valuable that they need to report back to us. I think that we do also want to be a little bit cognizant of, do these boards and committees meet to generate their own ideas about what should happen that they then bring to us, or do these boards and committees meet to do the work that is directed from the commission, right? I mean, we all just met for 3 hours on Saturday to decide what the priorities are. We're going to be meeting again to decide what priorities are for any given time period. So I think we want to be a little bit careful about just throwing out a blanket like, what do you think you should be doing? And then having them be working on things that aren't a priority that we as the commission have set for whatever time period we're looking at. So I don't know that changes at all your idea about, throw it back to the committees to determine some of these things on their own. I think it's just something we want to watch out for.
No, I was thinking really in terms of the stated purpose of the charter. We
Yeah.
haven't revisited that in a very long time, especially the beach stewardship.
Yeah.
They're talking about, they have zero impact on beach renourishment.
Yeah,
They can write letters,
yeah,
send emails. That's about, So what I'm saying is give them as a task for the coming year, maybe start on come up with a plan at the first meeting. Here's how we're going to tackle it, is take a look at the charter. Tell us, does the charter accurately reflect
what they're doing.
what you're actually doing? Do we need to amend the charter and the purpose of that committee in the charter?
Yep.
So that it accurately reflects what they actually do. not necessarily setting the agenda each year, but really on an even bigger scale, does what the chart, are you doing what the charter says? Or do we need to amend the charter because you're no longer doing something, or you're doing all these other things that really should be codified?
Yeah, no, I think that makes, I think that
So
makes
rather
sense.
than us
Yeah.
reviewing the charter and each individual, let the committees who are actually doing the work, let them look at the charter and then bring a proposal back to the commission that we can discuss with them and then vote on whether we want to make those charter amendments for those committees.
Yeah, no, that sounds fine.
Who do,
My only concern is just, that we actually get this done.
well, this will be.
Whatever we're going to do, that, we're not sitting here 24 months from now and still talking about it. But I don't know if it's appropriate, but is it all right to ask the clerk's opinion on a couple of things?
Sure.
So-
But just to answer, my proposal is that that we give them a directive for each of the committees, that this is one of the first meeting, this is going to be on their agenda.
No, I
Right, so we're not
like
talking,
what everybody said.
we're not talking about, and then, for the ones that meet, monthly, maybe we say, look, you need to wrap this up by the end of Q1. For the ones that meet less frequently, but I think this is something that they should be able to wrap up in 1 to 3 meetings. Yes.
You all make it sound so simple. So this is a lot of this is a lot of organizational work, and what you're really talking about is you're seeking strategic alignment. So I just want to caution that it's simple work, because we're going to have a lot of opinions about current roles, future roles, desired roles. And I also want to understand from the commission, is this a clerk's office initiative that they're going to lead, or is this a city manager's office initiative? There will be staff work required, and I would want a very thoughtful, facilitated process with each one of these bodies. So I just want you to be mindful of the planning. If you want good work, it's not just asking them 5 questions and coming back and giving you 5 answers. We're going to have to call the data, put it together. There'll be lots of emotion around purpose. If you've ever done vision or mission work, it rarely gets done in 3 meetings, unfortunately. So I just be mindful that I'm not sure neither one of us could deliver this in first quarter. I want to be very clear. That would be nearly impossible to give you a good work product. I would also ask that when you're thinking about the strategic alignment, that because these are all advisory in nature, my goal would be long-term that your priorities feed into their work, not their desires feed up to you. While their feedback's important and it's going to inform you on your priority work setting, if we do it the reverse, I think that's why you've seen a lot of frustration, is because they're at committee level saying, we want this done. Staff's trying to do what commission wants, and now they're getting referred work out of committee. And so it basically makes it that we don't get anything done. The best example I can give you is the turtle ordinance. I don't know that ever came down from the commission as something that was extremely important, and we were getting lots of pressure from the committee. And so there's this push-pull between 2 bodies, one appointed and one elected. So those are my words of wisdom this evening, but we would need some clarification on which office you would like to lead this, because I think the clerk's office spends a lot of time with these, the boards and commissions, so I just didn't want to leave her out.
You had some questions?
Well, I guess this just kind of feeds into that more, but I know, like I say, the initial genesis from this, for me, when I, once again, was very young in my experience in this chamber, and it wasn't as a commissioner, it was as a member of the public, was the city manager, the city clerk pulling her hair out on the subjects of attendance and the mandatory reports. So I don't know, maybe this has gotten better, and really the only issue we have is getting better communication between the boards and the commission and staff, and maybe we don't need to change anything to get that, to get to that point other than just working harder at it or making a concerted effort to engage them more. But I think that the city clerk should comment on this because
And not
once
to put
again,
Amber on the spot, so I don't want to put her on the spot, but I hear what you're saying. I think that's us, right? There's something that's already written, right? We already have an attendance, or let me say policy, but we have something written. The reporting is already written. Who enforces it sits up here, right? Amber can communicate to us that, as she's done in the past, which is that frustration I think that Commissioner Mulholland is talking about, is here's five people who have not reported and what we do about it, right? There's not the frustration, there's nothing being done. If you missed attendance, are you being removed? Did we say we were going to remove them? So that, I think, falls on us, not so much on Amber. I mean, Amber, you can communicate that to us if you wanted to, but that's what I hear as the frustration in the past, is that she comes to us and reports it, and it's almost like it falls in deaf ears, right? Nothing happens. At least that's what I see.
well, I think historically that's absolutely true, but every commission's going to be different. I certainly don't have any problem telling somebody to either come to the meeting or get off the committee. But, you know, I sat here and watched two different commissions that did nothing about that. So if I'm the city clerk, I'm saying, I don't trust these guys. I want something codified. Well, I'm just being honest.
Well, but that doesn't then fall on the committees, right? Wouldn't that fall on the commission?
No,
Like, how do you codify the
it does fall on the commission, and it fell on deaf ears in the past. Again, so I'll make the same proposal I've made the last several times, which is, hopefully we can check off one of these things off tonight, right?
Yeah.
So on the lobbyist report, so we'll come back to the first idea. On the lobbyist report, I think it should be very simple. You don't fill it out, you do not get to participate.
Totally agree.
Right?
Absolutely.
And then you've missed your 3 meetings, you're out, right? You fail to report a second time, my proposal is 2 strikes, you're out. You forget one time, I understand. You know, everybody has one of these. Put it on your calendar. It's on my calendar. I have it set on the 9th of the quarter with a reminder the week before, a second reminder the day before, and then 3 reminders the day of just in case I forget. I'm just saying, it's not that hard, right? So to me, it's if you fail to fill out the lobbyist report, you do not get to participate in any future meetings of that board. If you fail to fill out a second time, you're off the board.
How's that enforced, though, Mr. Mayor? I mean, doesn't the commission or the respective commissioner have to enforce that? I don't think the city clerk has the authority to enforce
Does that have
that.
to be codified? I mean, it's not written like that
So the
in.
lobbyist one is not written,
Mhm.
as stated by the mayor, no. And actually, in the lobbyist ordinance, it doesn't specify which boards, but if you guys remember, I just focus on the boards that have to report to the state annually, the Form 1, so that's what I narrowed it down to, your 2 boards, planning and Board of Adjustment. And I would say, as of recent, there's just 1 member that hasn't done their last quarter report, but everybody else has turned theirs in on time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's not.
Last year, we had multiple members. We had commission members who refused to
Yes.
fill out their, so I don't know if that's something we need to kick back, to use your terminology, to the city attorney's office and help draft something that we can put into the lobbyist registration ordinance, or we put it into the board's ordinance. I'm not sure where it needs to belong.
If I get your direction, I'll put it into the code of ordinances under the boards.
Okay, and then the prescription would
If you
be
want them
that,
all to fill out lobbyist reports, let me know, we'll write that in. If you want the number of absences 3 and to result in automatic removal, you can do that. And let me know what you want about how many strikes on the lobbyist reports. And we can write that in.
And just to be like the teacher, from the schools, is there excused absences? I mean, being fair, because, things happen. Does that have to be codified, or is that just something internal, like we know hey, there
Let's say-
could have been a death in the family, there could be someone in the hospital. I mean, there's things that could happen.
Typically, they're unexcused, like we would say 3 unexcused absences, or 2, or however many you want.
Mhm. Okay,
So on the lobbyist report, you have 10 days,
right,
right?
that's a
So
little different.
I don't know that there's any excuses.
hospitalized.
I mean, listen, yeah, look, if you're in a coma, but I'm just talking in general terms, you've got 10 days, so,
Mhm.
you know, there should be plenty of time.
More specifically, is about
Yeah.
attendance, if you're not able to come, especially if we don't, I know you're going to do the next part, or one of the parts is about whether you can do a virtual meeting. You know,
Right.
I've had to go to Connecticut, you know, when my father-in-law passed away, but I joined the commission meeting because it was allowed for me to join,
Sure.
you know.
So if we tackle the lobbyist reporting first, how do you all feel about that proposal?
I would like to clarify if you're talking about adding lobbyist reports to more of the boards and committees, or if we're still just talking about
Just the ones that are
just the ones that are
required.
already required.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. If you, so the what you've proposed is that if you don't fill out a lobbyist report, if you have not yet filled it out by the due date, you can't participate in the next meeting until you have filled it out.
Mhm.
And then if you're late twice, you're out, or just if you don't do it at all twice?
If you miss the deadline
Twice.
twice,
In a row, or twice ever?
period.
Okay, so if you missed it once and then 5 years later you missed it again, you're out.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Okay.
not, you've got 10 days
I'm
every
just,
time.
I'm just clarifying what you're saying. I don't have a strong opinion about it one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, we're dealing with adults. You should be able to use a calendar
Yeah.
and fill it out. And
I think that if down the road, you know, at some points in the past, it's been, luckily it hasn't been the case lately, that there have been people who want to be involved, right, and want to serve on the boards and committees. There have been times in the past when that has been a more difficult ask to find people to serve. And so, you know, if the time comes down the road when that becomes the scenario again, you know, in the future, if people who are involved at that time may want to rethink how freely you get rid of people, depending on how hard or easy it is to find people to participate. But currently, there's people want to participate. We haven't had a lot of trouble finding people to participate. I'm totally fine with that proposal.
right. Okay.
I have concerns on that lobbyist report for simply the fact that, you know, we do have the qualification of the members, that it's only persons that do not have any personal private interests that are appointed to the boards. And I have a concern that we do have one member that hasn't filled out the lobbyist form that is a member of an advocacy group, or is a lobbyist, is a member of a advocacy group. So I have concerns with that, and I thought prior that was something that was not allowed with our previous city manager. That was kind of deemed as a no-no, and that would, to me, fall right into a conflict of interest.
City
And it's a
attorney.
voting board as well.
Yeah.
So
The city.
that would be a concern.
Okay, so let's tackle the first one, and that is a valid point, and we can address as well. So on the lobby registration and then the requirements, are we in agreement? Right, you miss the deadline, you do not get to participate in the next meeting. You miss it a second time during a term, you're off the board.
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
So we got that done. Good. Okay, so maybe what we can do is, for your question, because the last time that was a city attorney directed, not city manager, maybe we can ask the city attorney to look into it and then come back, you know, at our next meeting or the meeting following. So the question is, if a if a board member is a registered lobbyist, and then they are also on a board. So we have had, previously, we've had individuals who are part of advocacy groups that we've asked to recuse them. So they were not even lobbyists, they were just members of advocacy groups, and we've asked them to recuse themselves. We had one instance where the husband was on the board. He was not a part of an advocacy group. The wife was a part of an advocacy group, and we asked him to recuse himself too. Okay, so those were one level and two levels far less severe than having somebody who is a lobbyist and then also on a board. So we can maybe, are you okay with asking the city attorney for an
Oh,
opinion?
absolutely.
And-
I think that's where it needs to
Well,
go.
I
I mean,
can tell you,
it
at
clearly
this point,
says
at the
this.
on the state level, the conflict of interest arises if there's a special pecuniary gain or loss to you yourself or a member of your immediate family, and that includes people that you live with. There is an exemption in the Commission on Ethics state rules. If you are serving on a nonprofit board and you're not taking any compensation, then you can vote on a matter even if that nonprofit is either the applicant or takes a position on it. You can choose what you want to do at the local level. If you want to allow that or prohibit that, then you can make that. You have to be no less stringent than the state, but you could be more stringent than the state.
Okay. So maybe what we can do with that one is, we're going to use Commissioner Mulholland's idea from last time. If this is something you're interested in, we'll let you run with it. And then to bring it back to the commission and say, look, I think we need to make amendments to the qualifications for the boards, or at least the big three.
Okay.
You know, if it's budget, if it's planning, if it's Board of Adjustment, maybe if you're a member of a lobbyist firm or whatever, and then we can bring it back to the commission. If the commission wants to move that forward or not, we can take it from there. Does that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay, good. So then the other one that we have in 11 minutes is attendance, remote attendance. So I don't have any particularly strong thoughts on that. I'd love to hear what you all think about it.
You're talking about if you miss 3 in a row type?
No, just first of all, allowing the boards, whether we want to allow the boards to participate remotely, whether we want to tell the boards, you make the decision on a case-by-case basis, or whether we want to dictate what the rules are. And then lastly is, if you're not present in person, does it count as one of your 3 absences? Or does it count as one of the excused absences rather than unexcused absence? Or how we want to count that?
So from my perspective, I am not a fan of the Zoom call-ins, and I think that we should make that decision. I don't think that should be left to the boards. I find we went a couple months here where we had someone Zooming in for every meeting, and I was in the audience, and it was very clunky. The meetings didn't flow well. I think that Zoom-ins should be one-offs. I do not feel that they should be anything that is frequent or often approved for any of the committees, so I absolutely would not support allowing them to make their own decisions, but I am only one of 5 here.
I could voice a little bit about virtual, especially because my profession is virtual. So I've been doing it for 11 years. And I don't see anything against having a Zoom meeting or participating in a Zoom or Teams or whatever platform you're using. But the word participate to me is what's important, okay? Because I have seen that happen. And as in my profession, if you're not able to actually be participating and completely involved, I'm not walking down the aisle doing my grocery while I'm listening into a meeting, or I'm in Disney World, enjoying the amusement park and trying to do my work. Okay, that's not participating. Actively engaged. If you're not able to be in a location that is quiet, conducive to the profession, then it doesn't count. then I would say, we can't hear so-and-so, let them know that we're turning them off, and that's not participating. You're gone, because it is wasting the audience, the residents, and our time. So as long as you are actively engaged and participating, I'm all for it. I mean, I've been doing it for 11 years. I do that with my students. I do it with my families. We do it as team members whenever we need. We did it, and most of us having to learn quickly through COVID. But again, we all know what the downfalls could be, and I 100% agree with you. If we can't hear you and you're not participating, then we need to shut you out. Door closed.
I would ask the city manager how much extra staff is needed, if any, for the Zoom call.
I'm actually going to defer to the clerk because she ends up having to coordinate with IT. And I would at least need one IT staff present at every meeting that occurs.
Yeah, so I agree with the city manager. You need to make sure that IT is here, but, you all, what I've witnessed in Zoom meetings with other people besides the commission, you all engage and read a room. Like, when it's time for you to speak, when it's not time for you to speak. That's not always the case when I've seen other board members participate. That's the challenging part. And if you wanted it to be something that was a regular occurrence and just like an option at all times, my recommendation then you would need like a room monitor so that that person can be muted and unmuted, because I have seen a couple of times where that person just talks and you have somebody else talking and they're not listening, and so they're talking over the people in the room, and that makes for a very difficult meeting and challenging for the minute taker, challenging for the presenter. So yeah, if you really wanted it to be something, then it does need to have more of an IT or somebody to monitor the Zoom room to unlock and lock someone's ability to comment just freely.
So would that be a second body or the same body?
It would be a discussion that the city manager and I would have to have with her staff.
And you just jogged my memory because even in the much larger city I came from, we did not have remote options on our boards and commissions because of the IT requirement.
Yes.
I have an IT team of 2.5 people here. So multiply the hours of the meetings by the year, and that's the resource you're going to pull from other things in the city. So it is work intensive on both the clerk and the IT.
Maybe it's because I'll add, the reason I do it as a profession is we're trained. I don't have someone running the meeting for me, but I'm trained to know how to moderate it. So yeah, there is a lot. I don't know what happens, back there when our Zoom is here, but like I said, I turn it off if it's not working. That's it, but we're all trained to run effective meetings on Zoom, Teams, or whatever platform. So
I think there's one small nuance to that, is that when you're doing it and when I do it for work, everybody's on it.
right.
And so what happens here is we've got 4 people and 1 person over there. We got to remember that there's a person there. So I think that's really the nuance, is that it's just usually 1 person, everybody else is physically present. It ends up kind of disrupting the flow of the meeting. Yes.
I would, my feeling about it, particularly when you take into account the added staff time and, potential for technical difficulties and all that, is that it either is not allowed, or that it would be allowed, each member of a board or committee would have, it would be allowed maybe once per year in case of emergency or something like that, but certainly I don't think we want it to be a regular, just because I want to kind of an option.
And I agree with that. I wasn't saying let's just do it all the time.
Yeah.
If it is an emergency, that's why I brought up
Yeah.
my father-in-law.
But if we allow every
Right.
board member once a year between
it could be every
between
meeting,
9
right?
boards
Yeah,
and
it's-
5 people.
Yeah,
so
it's
No, I
still a
know.
lot of
so
time.
that ends
yeah.
up being 15 in
Right, yeah.
total.
Right,
and then-
exactly.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
think
mean,
it's,
I think the easy answer is that it's just not allowed, and if you have to miss, you have to miss. And I think it's an excellent idea to have a difference between excused and unexcused absences when talking about attendance requirements, because I think we don't want to just eliminate people from the boards and committees who are engaged people who really want to be involved and are doing a great job because they have, you know, some bad luck and are, you know, sick one meeting and have a family emergency the next meeting, or, you know, something like that. I think we want to be careful about setting up a scene where we're just kicking people out because they had unfortunate circumstances. But I think if we have excused versus unexcused absences and then no virtual option, I think that's fine.
Okay, so we'll tackle one at a time. So on the remote participation, sounds like we have consensus on we do not allow it for the boards.
Not the commission, right? Just the board.
For the boards, yeah. And even at the commission level, we do it, you know, normally the commissioner notifies us in advance. The commissioner is notified, the commissioner makes it, I mean, even I've made the request, right? So it's not, I'm not exempt from it. We make the request, the commission says yea or nay. You know, again, I think most of us have maybe done it once per year, if at all.
But now, and just to clarify, because I mean, it happened to me because it was a death in the family, but that was a commission meeting where we were doing conditional use applications. So it's like, you know.
We're talking about the boards, not the commission, right?
Okay,
So
but I'm saying, like, because I thought we said that if it's unexcused, like, it's okay to be absent, I understand that. But like, if there's something like you really want to participate because it's, I mean, everything's important, I guess.
then you make
I don't know.
well, look,
I'm just bringing an example.
Beach Stewardship, John Kurzman, flew in the morning of, or the evening before, because he felt that he wanted to be part of that meeting. And even though he wasn't scheduled to be here, he flew in. I mean, I don't know how much more, if there's a will, there's a way, right? So, okay, so we have consensus, no remote participation for board members. Okay, so we can look at if we have 0 time. But, I mean, we can extend this meeting by 5-10 minutes, or we can.
Do we need a motion for that?
I mean, I think on talking about attendance, I think, is that something we want to wait and hear back from the individual boards? Because of what you were mentioning earlier with the different numbers of times that they meet?
Percentage.
Yeah, so I mean, okay, so then we can go back to the bigger issue. And so city manager, you said my crazy idea of Q1 is just crazy, right? So do you think this is something that could be tackled over the course of the next 12 months? And here's why I thought it was simple, right? I think everything is simple anyway, but I figured if we lay out the groundwork where the, you know, it's cut and paste for each board. Okay, here's your homework, here's your responsibilities, you know, so that, yes, we would guide each board through it, but we wouldn't have to reinvent everything for each board, but rather, here's the question that we need to answer, question 1, question 2, question 3. You know, this is part of your responsibilities to work on for the next 12 months. Or do we say this was not discussed on Saturday and the priorities for the next 90 days, and we revisit this issue in April at the next priority meeting? Which that would be my vote, is we.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good idea. I mean, I think we could very easily task all the boards and committees with, at their first meeting this year, having their own discussion about attendance policies, because that doesn't get into the whole, you know, does your mission align with the charter? But for anything more substantial than that, I think
I don't even think we need to do that. We'll just I say if it wasn't part of the priorities on Saturday, we have our next priority meeting in April. You know, we tackled 2 of Commissioner Mulholland's big 3 items. We can revisit this one. Does that sound fair?
We're making progress,
We got 2/3 of the way there.
Yep.
making
We
progress.
got 2 out of 3 down.
And
So,
all things.
and we have a plan for the other one as well, so it's not like we're letting it go. Okay,
That works.
excellent. Any other comments, questions, thoughts? All right, in that case, we are adjourned.